Hello, my name is Alex, and this is Travel TitBits, episode 4. A little different this time. I thought I would go for a slightly more unscripted version, so we'll see how that goes. So, my starting subject today is about the first time I ever saw a jumbo jet. When I was in my teens, in the mid to late 70s, that was the time when I was first allowed to do things on my own and going to various towns and cities and cycle rides. Um, but suddenly we decided, oh, why don't we go watch some planes? And every day, you see, this thing called the Concorde went across, and you could set your watches by it. At 11 a.m., roughly, you would hear the roar, and this beautiful bird would go across the sky. So that sealed the deal. In this era, the only way to get to Heathrow was to take a train to either Reading or London Paddington and then take the bus. Now, airports, if you hadn't seen any in the 1970s, certainly the major ones were very exciting to see because there weren't many motorways. And at the entrance of Heathrow, or as London Airport it was called, it was a dual carriageway and it went underneath the airport and popped up the other side into an area where there were three terminal buildings, 1, 2, and 3. In between terminals 1 and 2, there was a roof that you could go up for, and they charged you 50p. And up there, you had a 360 view of the whole airfield. And it had speakers, it had occasional announcements from the air traffic controller, it had a tuck shop. You know, what else do you need if you're going to watch aircraft? And it was amazing. You could see all the action. There was so much action, you didn't know where to stand first. And of course, the point we had been there was to see a takeoff of Concorde, which was absolutely incredible, and to see what was becoming increasingly common, which was jumbo jets. Now, up until that time, there hadn't been very large aircraft, and the jumbo jet was really the first entry into this. It had a big space bubble type frontage on there, and when it was first designed, it was primarily designed for cargo, and it was only when the American version of the Concorde project, or their own version, was terminated that Boeing put all their weight behind this jumbo. And out it came in 1969. And during the 1970s, it was a massive rush by a lot of airlines because it really changed mass flight for lots of people. 3 or 400 people on an aircraft at a time was unheard of. And lots of airlines rushed to get into it as quickly as possible. So Heathrow turned out to be a great location to watch jumbos. When they took off, boy, the noise, you knew that something special was going to happen. And they were the only aircraft that needed the entire runway to take off. The only thing about it was, on the day we were there was just one small part of the airfield that you could not see, and it was the far end of the runway. Briefly, a jumbo jet would appear to disappear behind the buildings before gliding serenely into the air. It was a beautiful sight. And the place was not just for geeky people who just liked watching aircraft. Families and friends would go there. It was a place where arrivals and departures were watched. It was a place where families went. It was a very friendly environment, and yeah, it stayed that way for a very long time. And sadly, it it only stopped after 2001. So I watched once upon a time a jumbo disaster movie. Only in America can such ideas be dreamt up. And Charlton Heston was the hero, and he saved the heroine from a disaster in the sky. And he did so by being winched in from a jet high above the jumbo jet. And of course, he did so just in time. And he hugged the heroine and presumably landed the jumbo safely on the ground. It was a very unrealistic story. But the reason I mention it is because part of the plot was him talking to the heroine and showing her where this thing called the automatic pilot button was. It's the third one down in the middle, 7 from the right. It says automatic. Is it on? So yes, it was all very silly. But the only reason I'm mentioning it at all is because automatic pilot became a more standard feature in aircraft manufacture, and it was a great movie with an unlikely ending, but it highlighted this new piece of technology, and it's well used today. Since the pandemic, and maybe a bit before, I started getting interested in YouTube channels following travel and aviation and rail. And one particular that I quite like watching has got an enormous following of something like 1 million plus subscribers. And what it does for this person, it makes him this thing called an influencer. And it opens doors. And the kind of doors it opens is entry to airline expositions where new technology is on display. It's anything aircraft-like that has left the drawing board. There are test aircraft, but they're not in final production. And it's an incredibly interesting environment. It's all very positive. They're looking for orders. They're showing the best of the next technology, comfy interiors, easier for pilots. Anyway, one aircraft in particular took this YouTuber's attention. It was a single pilot jet with 1 or 2 passengers possible. But the thing that he liked about it was this big red button on the ceiling of the cockpit. And he said, well, he didn't say what it's really called. Well, we shall call it the unfandango button. And basically, if the pilot has a situation that disables his ability to land the aircraft safely, the passenger has the option of pressing this button. And when it's pressed, it does wonderful things all for you. It arranges the emergency services, it contacts all the relevant authorities, it contacts the emergency services and works out which airport you can reach to safely in the shortest amount of time. It just does it all. And the software behind this must be absolutely extraordinary to make all this happen. My only concern was that if this feature was to catch on, and there was a pretty tricky day when there was multiple Fandango moments, I wonder what would happen if the local airport had their own unfandango button. Well, I don't want you to worry about your next flight. I think it's highly unlikely that you'll be seeing an unfandango button in economy anytime soon. Have a lovely day.